Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the mighty 18-wheeler rumbled down the barren interstate, Jasper's weathered hands skillfully maneuvered the big rig. The open road stretched endlessly ahead, a never-ending journey through the heartland, where flatlands and cornfields danced under the setting sun. Jasper's eyes, hardened by countless miles, remained unwavering, focused on each passing mile marker. Days merged into nights, his weary body attuned to the truck's rhythms. But as he battled physical exhaustion, an inner turmoil stirred within. A private yearning, locked away in the depths of his soul, began to stir. The dusk enveloped the countryside, transforming the sky into a canvas of fiery hues. Jasper's thoughts drifted to the unassuming duffel, tucked away in the cozy sleeper cabin. He'd spent his entire life conforming to others' expectations, the tough, rugged trucker persona he'd cultivated over the years. But deep down, he yearned for something different, something that felt more authentic. The neon lights of a roadside motel caught his eye, and on impulse, Jasper signaled and pulled off the highway. He needed a break, both from driving and from the constant internal struggle. "Evening," the motel clerk mumbled, barely looking up from his magazine as Jasper entered the office.
"Room for one?"
Jasper nodded, his voice gruff.
"Yeah, just for the night."
Key in hand, he made his way to his room, the weight of the duffel bag seeming to grow heavier with each step. Once inside, he locked the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. This was it. Miles from anyone who knew him, Jasper finally had the chance to explore the part of himself he'd kept hidden for so long. With trembling hands, he unzipped the duffel bag and pulled out the Daisy Duke outfit. The soft denim shorts and gingham crop top felt foreign yet exciting in his rough, work-worn hands. Jasper took a deep breath and began to change. He slipped out of his faded blue jeans and flannel shirt, replacing them with the shorts and top. The fabric felt cool against his skin, a stark contrast to his usual attire. Turning to face the mirror, Jasper gasped. The person staring back at him was both familiar and strange. The shorts hugged his hips, showing off legs that were surprisingly shapely despite years of sitting behind a wheel. The crop top revealed a slice of midriff, and even with his broad shoulders and lack of curves, there was something undeniably feminine about the overall look. For the first time in his life, Jasper felt right, as if he was seeing his true self for the first time. In that moment, he made a decision. This wasn't Jasper anymore. This was Adele. Adele. The name came to her unbidden, feeling as natural as breathing. She ran her hands down her sides, marveling at how different she felt in these clothes. It wasn't just about the outfit. It was about finally allowing herself to be who she'd always known she was inside. She spent hours in front of that mirror, practicing walking in a more feminine way, experimenting with her hair, even attempting to apply some of the makeup she'd impulsively bought along with the outfit. The results were far from perfect, but to Adele, they were beautiful. As the night wore on, Adele found herself filled with a newfound energy. She danced around the small motel room, reveling in the freedom of movement the shorts allowed. She practiced speaking in a softer, higher voice, giggling at her own attempts. But as the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, reality set in. Adele knew she couldn't stay in this motel room forever. She had a job to do, deliveries to make. With a heavy heart, she changed back into Jasper's clothes, carefully folding the Daisy Duke outfit and tucking it away in the duffel bag. As she climbed back into the truck, Jasper felt like a shell, a costume she was forced to wear. The memory of Adele, of how right it had felt, stayed with her throughout the long day of driving. For the next few weeks, Jasper lived for those stolen moments in motel rooms, truck stop bathrooms, and the privacy of her cab when parked for the night. Each time she transformed into Adele, it became harder to go back to being Jasper. During one particularly long haul, Jasper found herself at a truck stop in a small town in Nevada. As she fueled up the rig, her eyes were drawn to a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a small boutique across the street. Without thinking, she found herself walking towards it. The bell above the door chimed as Jasper entered. The shop was filled with colorful fabrics, racks of dresses, and mannequins sporting the latest fashions. It was a world away from the grime and diesel of the truck stop.
Can I help you?
A voice called out. An older woman with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes emerged from the back room. Jasper cleared her throat, suddenly nervous. I saw the sign in the window." The woman, whose name tag read Barbara, looked Jasper up and down, taking in the worn jeans and flannel shirt. "You're interested in working in a boutique?" Jasper nodded, words failing her. How could she explain that this felt like a lifeline, a chance to step into the world she'd only dreamed of? Barbara's expression softened. "You know, I've been in this business a long time. I've learned to see people for who they really are, not just what they show on the outside." She paused, studying Jasper's face. "Why don't you tell me why you really came in here?" Something in Barbara's tone, in the kindness of her eyes, broke down the walls Jasper had built over the years. Before she knew it, she was pouring out her story. About Adele, about the secret longings, about the fear of losing everything she'd known. Barbara listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. When Jasper finished, tears streaming down her face, Barbara simply said,
"Well, honey, it sounds like you've been on a long journey. Maybe it's time to park that truck and start a new one."
Over the next few hours, as the sun set and the store emptied of customers, Barbara and Jasper talked about fashion, about identity, about dreams long deferred. Barbara shared her own story of starting the boutique after years in a job that made her miserable. "Life's too short to live someone else's version of it," she said. By the time they locked up the shop, a plan had formed. Jasper would finish her current run, then take some time off. Barbara offered her a place to stay and a job in the shop, a chance to learn the business from the ground up. And, Barbara added with a wink, a chance for Adele to spread her wings. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Jasper completed her deliveries, her mind racing with possibilities. She gave notice to the trucking company, citing a need for a career change. Her fellow drivers were surprised. Jasper had always seemed born to the road, but wished her well. Finally, the day came. Jasper parked the truck for the last time, handed in her keys, and walked away. In her duffel bag were a few clothes, some toiletries, and the Daisy Duke outfit that had started it all. Barbara was waiting when Jasper arrived back in the small Nevada town. She led her to a small apartment above the boutique. "It's not much," she said, "but it's a place to start." That night, Jasper became Adele for what felt like the first time. Not in a hidden motel room or a truck cab, but in a place she could call home. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, excited for what the future might hold. The next morning, Adele woke early, filled with nervous energy. She stood in front of the mirror, running her hands through her short, auburn hair. It would take time to grow it out, she realized. But that was okay. Everything about this new life would take time. She dressed carefully in the clothes Barbara had lent her, a flowing skirt in a soft blue that swished around her knees, and a white blouse that complemented her broad shoulders rather than trying to hide them. The outfit was a far cry from the Daisy Dukes, but it felt right, professional, feminine, and most importantly, authentic. As she made her way downstairs to the boutique, Adele's heart raced. This was it. Her first day not just presenting as a woman, but living as one. The bell above the door chimed as she entered, and Barbara looked up from where she was arranging a display. "Well, good morning, Adele," Barbara said with a warm smile. "Ready for your first day?" Adele nodded, her voice soft but determined. "More than ready." The day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Barbara patiently taught Adele the basics of running the shop, how to operate the cash register, the best way to fold and display clothes, how to help customers find the perfect outfit. Adele absorbed it all eagerly, reveling in the soft fabrics and vibrant colors that surrounded her. There were challenges, of course. Adele's hands, calloused from years of driving and mechanical work, sometimes fumbled with delicate zippers or tiny buttons. Her voice, still deeper than she'd like, occasionally drew curious looks from customers. But for every moment of discomfort or self-doubt, there were countless others of joy and affirmation. A young woman gushed over Adele's fashion sense when she helped her pick out a dress for a first date. An elderly customer thanked her profusely for her patience in helping her find a comfortable yet stylish outfit. Each positive interaction boosted Adele's confidence, helping her settle into her new role. As closing time approached, Barbara pulled Adele aside. "You did wonderfully today," she said. "How are you feeling?" Adele's eyes welled up with happy tears. "I feel like me. For the first time in my life, I feel like me." Barbara squeezed her hand. "That's what it's all about, honey. Now, let's close up shop and celebrate your first day with some dinner. I know a great little Italian place down the street." Over pasta and wine, Adele and Barbara chatted like old friends. Adele shared stories from her trucking days, now able to laugh at the absurdity of trying to maintain her masculine facade. Barbara, in turn, regaled her with tales from her years in the fashion industry. As they walked back to the boutique under a star-filled sky, Adele felt a sense of peace she'd never known before. This small town, so different from the endless highways she'd called home for so long, already felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever been. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Adele threw herself into learning everything she could about fashion and retail. She spent her evenings studying fashion magazines, watching tutorials on makeup and hairstyling, and practicing her feminine voice. Slowly but surely, she began to feel more comfortable in her own skin. Her appearance began to change as well. Her auburn hair grew out, framing her face in soft waves. Hormone therapy, begun under the care of a sympathetic doctor Barbara introduced her to, started to soften her features and redistribute her body fat in a more feminine pattern. There were hard days, of course. Days when a customer would give her a strange look, or when she'd catch a glimpse of her reflection and see traces of Jasper staring back at her. But those days became fewer and farther between as time passed. One day, about 6 months into her new life, Adele was helping a customer when she heard the bell above the door chime. She looked up to see a man in a trucker's cap and flannel shirt walk in, looking decidedly out of place among the racks of dresses and blouses. For a moment, Adele froze. It was Tom, one of her old trucking buddies. She'd lost touch with most of her old colleagues after leaving the industry, too afraid of their potential reactions to her transition. Tom's eyes scanned the store before landing on Adele. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought he might not recognize her. Then his eyes widened in surprise.
"Jasper?"
he said, his voice a mix of confusion and disbelief.
"Is that you?"
Adele took a deep breath, steeling herself. "It's Adele now, Tom. But yes, it's me." Tom stood there for a long moment, processing. Then, to Adele's surprise, a slow smile spread across his face.
"Well, I'll be damned,"
he said.
"When you said you were leaving for a career change, I never imagined this. But you know what? You look happy, happier than I ever saw you on the road."
Tears welled up in Adele's eyes as she stepped forward to hug her old friend.
"I am happy, Tom. Happier than I've ever been."
They spent the next hour catching up, Tom marveling at the changes in his old friend, while Adele delighted in sharing her new life. As he was leaving, Tom paused at the door.
"You know, Adele, the guys back at the truck stop would love to hear from you. If you're comfortable with it, that is. We've missed you."
Adele nodded, touched by the acceptance she'd never dared to hope for. "I'd like that, Tom. I've missed you all too." As the door closed behind Tom, Barbara appeared at Adele's side. "You okay, honey?" she asked, having witnessed the entire interaction. Adele turned to her, a bright smile on her face. "You know what? I'm more than okay. I'm fantastic." That night, as Adele sat at her small desk in her apartment, she found herself sketching. She'd always doodled, even in her Jasper days, but had never taken it seriously. Now, inspired by her day and the unexpected reconnection with her past, her pencil flew across the paper. What emerged was a design for a dress, one that combined elements of her past and present. It had the rugged practicality of her trucking days in its durable fabric and comfortable cut, but with a feminine flair in its flowing lines and delicate embellishments. Adele sat back, studying her creation. For the first time, she could see a future beyond working in the boutique. She loved her job, loved helping other women find clothes that made them feel beautiful and confident. But maybe, just maybe, she could do more. The next morning, she showed the sketch to Barbara. The older woman studied it carefully, her eyes lighting up. "Adele, this is wonderful! You've got a real talent here!" Over the next few months, with Barbara's encouragement, Adele began to explore her newfound passion for design. She took online courses in fashion design and garment construction, spending her free time sketching and sewing. Her first few attempts were far from perfect, but with each project, she improved. A year into her new life, Adele stood nervously in the boutique, surrounded by her very first collection. It was small, just 5 pieces, but each one represented hours of work and a lifetime of experiences. There was the dress inspired by her trucking days, a blouse that echoed the freedom she'd felt in that first Daisy Duke outfit, a skirt that flowed like the open road. Barbara had agreed to display Adele's designs in the boutique, a show of faith that brought tears to Adele's eyes. As the first customers of the day began to trickle in, Adele held her breath, waiting to see their reactions. To her delight and Barbara's pride, the collection was a hit. Women loved the unique designs, the blend of practicality and elegance. By the end of the week, every piece had sold, and there were orders for more. As Adele stood in the empty boutique that Saturday evening, surrounded by the remnants of her successful debut. She felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She thought back to that night in the motel room when she'd first allowed herself to be Adele. How far she'd come since then. Barbara approached, a proud smile on her face. "Well, my dear, it looks like you've found your calling. What's next?" Adele looked around the boutique that had been her safe haven, her training ground, her home for the past year. She thought of the sketches piling up in her apartment, the ideas bubbling in her mind. She thought of all the women out there, like her, who might be looking for clothes that helped them express their true selves. "I think," she said slowly, a smile spreading across her face, "it might be time to start my own line. Something for women like me, women who've taken the long way around to find themselves." Barbara pulled her into a tight hug. "Oh, honey, I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'll be with you every step of the way." As they locked up the shop and stepped out into the cool evening air, Adele felt a sense of excitement and possibility she hadn't experienced since those first days of her transition. She'd found her true self, found acceptance and love, and now she'd found a way to share that journey with others. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but Adele was ready for them. After all, she'd already traveled the hardest road of all, the road to becoming herself. Whatever came next, she would face it as Adele, designer, woman, and finally, truly herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.